joining the Zoom meeting. I would like, in better circumstances, I would like to meet you guys and be in person and everything, but we'll just have to work with this. So as Lena said, right now I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I currently work at the Missouri Botanical Garden. I'm the supervisor for our home gardening center. Oh, before I forget, hold on, I need to start recording this meeting, so hold on a second. All right. Oh, I cannot record it. Oops. Let's see. Okay, well, we can't do that right now. Anyway, hold on a second. Oh dear. Okay. Hold on just a second, guys. I've got some technical issues. Hold on just a sec.
Do you need help sharing the screen?
Yes, I do. Can you let me share the screen and also do the recording?
The recording is enabled, and if you just hit the green button, it should show the screen now.
Okay. It's still saying I need to give you need to give me permission.
That's weird.
What did we do? I think in the participants thing, on the sidebar or participants, you can click on the sidebar to pop up, and then if you mouse over my name, it should, I think you can make me the host that way.
You can't share
you're recording it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try share. Oh, I'll be, okay, now it works. Okay. We're good. I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. Okay, so yes, I'm at the Missouri Botanical Garden in St. Louis. So if you've ever, has anybody been to the Missouri Botanical Garden? Anybody?
No.
Oh, actually, okay, Charlotte, I saw your head. Sweet. Yeah, and I also, so if you've ever used Plant Finder, the online, that's one aspect of my job. I help to manage those profiles and take thousands of photos for our database. And I give presentations. I actually am sort of a plant doctor. We have services where people can come in and get their gardening questions answered, either over the phone, through email, or in person. Currently, we're the building's closed because of COVID, but on normal years, you could just come in and get your questions answered. So try to help out people and figure out what's wrong with their plants. And I also have, we also have some live beehives out there. So I help, we have a beekeeper and I help to maintain those. So, it's a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. But I lived in Lubbock for 18 years. The last couple, which I spent a lot of time at the Landmark. I became a master naturalist in 2014 and just fell in love with the plants out there. I'm a big plant nerd, so proud of it, and I can't see myself doing anything else. So, so tonight I'm going to talk to you about the wildflowers of the Landmark. Now, I love this area. I love this place. And let me get this going here. And I had to really struggle to narrow things down so we don't run over time. I could talk about these plants all day, but let's see. I think this will work. Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen? If you can nod, if you can. Okay.
Yes.
Woohoo. Okay. So yes, Wildflowers Lubbock Lake Landmark. Okay, so I'm hoping that you guys have been out to the Landmark to really see what's going on out there. And just so you know, if I'm turning this way, if you see my face, it's because I'm doing dual screen right now. So, pardon me. So Lubbock Lake Landmark, it is part of the Yellow House Draw, which is like a mini version of kind of a valley. And it's about 320 acres. It's short grass prairie. It's most known because it's a state archaeological landmark and a National Historic Landmark, and run by Texas Tech University. Of course, it's most noted for its field lab for geology and soils, radiocarbon dating, and of course, archaeology. It has one of the most extensive records out there with over 11,000 years of cultural and natural history just for the Southern High Plains. So, and of course, it's an active dig site, so it's still a phenomenal place out there, even just, just the history and what the material that they're presenting out there. So, why am I interested in wildflowers, and particularly those that are on the Southern High Plains or the landmark? First of all, I started doing this because I wanted to gain a better understanding of the native panhandle plants. I realized when I was becoming a master naturalist, I was like, I don't know, I've lived here almost 15 years and I don't even know what grows here. And so I kind of took it upon myself to start learning them. And I literally would go out at least once a week, sometimes two, and even sometimes 3 times, and just walk the trails, take pictures, learn to recognize these flowers. And Lena and Kippy and Glenda and the others can attest to this, because that's how I got to know them. So it's a lot of fun, and I've learned so much, and so I'd like to share it with you guys. The other thing is the Panhandle is not really well studied in terms of flora inventory or diversity. You'll find, and you'll see this as master naturalists, that the rest of the Panhandle does not get as much love as the rest of the state, and which is unfortunate. I think people tend to get turned off by our area because, we're flat, we're dry, and we're brown. But there is so much out there, I mean, that needs to be studied. It's, there's so many diverse species out there. So, like I said, little concern for the area, jumped ahead. And then also, that's why I want to, educate people and promote understanding that there's so much out here. There's so much to see. You just got to know where to look. And there's still so many questions about these species that we just don't know about. We know how they grow, we know kind of where their distribution is, but I've found some species that when you look at the maps, they're not supposed to be up here. So I'm like, why is that? There's certain plants that only grow on certain type of soils. I'm curious as to know why. So there's a lot more things that we need to learn. I'd like to learn about these species. Oh, and if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box and I'll check it periodically, just so you know. Okay. So here's to give you a kind of estimate of the numbers just out at the landmark. This is a very rough estimate. It's not a final count, but judging by the list that I've had and what I've seen out there, there's roughly about 180 wildflower species. This makes up roughly about 79% of the plants out there, 40 different types of grasses, and 6 tree species, so to speak. So roughly about 225 or 226 species out there, which is quite a bit for just a small, 325 acres. The biggest family out there, no surprise, is the sunflower family. This is the aster family. 40% of those plants are sunflower species. Which is not surprising. They are, in terms of the number of plants, in the entire world, they're the biggest family, but frequently back and forth between asters and orchids. And the second largest family is the bean family. They're also really well known with coming in second with 23%. And then you have smaller populations or smaller numbers for everything else. So quite a lot of species out there. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is the landscape, because oftentimes when you're out there, if you're looking for a particular species, looking at the landscape and understanding, the soils and where things will tell you where things grow or give you clues as to where you can find the species. So this is a map of the landmark here. Just to kind of orient you, this is the interpretive center here. There's the parking lot, and this area is the archaeology area, the wildflower trail or the boardwalk, And then the dotted line is the main path that kind of circles all the way up to the northern section and on around. There is also on the border here, this is also called the perimeter trail. So it's on the edge of the boundary, but you can still walk that area too and see a few things there. There's a couple of terms I might throw out when referring to where plants are growing in the draw. So like I said, the draw is kind of like a mini valley, and if you can, kind of like a mirror image, if you stand on the top, which would be kind of where the parking lot is, you're on what's called the rim or the edge, okay? And then if you step off that, you kind of go down into a slope. Sometimes those slopes can be, most of them are pretty distinctive, and they're really rough, like kind of outcrops on the slope. And then it'll eventually lead down to the path. So that's like your walking path, the trail right here. And then just a little further down, you actually will end up in the center of the draw. Well, the draw is considered the center. And so if you stood like right here in the middle, you would be in the draw. And then if you went up the other side, it would be the exact same thing. Okay, so certain species out here, wildflowers grow only on the slope, or you'll see more of them in in one area than the other, and that's why I wanted to clarify that. Okay, so the landscape, come on. There's different types of areas that plants are going to grow in, of course. So most of it is going to be grass. Even though there's only about 40 grass species, grass is completely the dominant species or the type of plant out there, hence the name shortgrass prairie. As you can see, this is the middle of the draw, and that's exactly what's out there. So it occurs on the draw, it occurs on slopes and the rim. It's everywhere. You also get some interesting sloped areas. It's not a huge slope, but you can definitely tell that the soil is a little different. It has more of a reddish tone to it. This is kind of really silty. It's really fine, almost sandy kind of soil. And this is mostly in the northern section of the landmark. You can see it from afar. It's very distinctive. We also have wetland areas now. If you guys have seen out there, this was back in, I think it was when I was grad school. In 2015, I could actually, this was dry still, I could actually walk down on this, the path. This is behind the archaeology buildings. And we got a lot of rain that year. And at the same time, I believe Scott, who manages the property out there, was starting to remove some of these Siberian elms on the edge. And what happened was taking those elms out actually allowed the water table to kind of rise. And since then, it has remained completely full. It hasn't dried out in the past couple of years. So I remember Dr. Johnson out saying that it's likely that in her lifetime, she's never going to get back down to those areas, because there are still sites down here that warrant study, but she doesn't think she's going to get back to it because that area is completely flooded. I think Kippy said that, I want to say that's at least 8 feet deep or more, which is crazy. There was a pile of brush or materials that were down here, and it's completely covered up. But what's really neat about this area, if you're a birder, this is a great spot to go. You've got red-winged blackbirds. We've seen blue herons out there. We've also turtles, and even now, recently, Kippy said that they even found beavers, of all things. She said it's never happened before in the Southern High Plains to have beavers up there. Like, that's just crazy. So it's really turning into an interesting area. And then lastly, this little area, this is also part of the slope, but it's rock caliche, that what people call natural concrete. It's that stuff, if you ever, dig down into the soil and you just hit hard pan and your shovel doesn't go anywhere, that's what's exposed on the slope. But I really like this area. I'm going to tell you a little secret about this, because even though this looks like this, it's like, what plant in their right mind would grow on something so dry, so ugly? Well, in the Panhandle, if you ever want to see the most diverse wildflower or diversity of species of wildflowers, this is what you need to look at. And this is true not just for the landmark, but in other places too. If you're ever along the Caprock, this is what you need to look for, because all the plants that just showed up are what grow on this soil here. A lot of our the species like very dry soil. They like well draining. They'll take up enough water to sustain them when it rains, but they don't like to have their feet wet. So so throughout the season, this is the stuff that you will see, which is pretty incredible. So I always go looking for this type of area. All right. Another aspect of the soil which is interesting, and you'll notice, is the stuff called cryptogamic soil, or it's known by many names like living soil, biological soil crust. It's all essentially the same thing, but it's basically a conglomerate of, it could be soil particles and also potentially a form of bacteria or fungi or lichens. These tend to show up in semi-arid regions, so throughout the world actually. And so because we are a semi-arid location, you will often see these growing in the, or on the soil. They tend to stay right at the soil surface. They don't, it's not like a plant that can grow upwards. It stays kind of flat. But they do provide some really good benefits to the soil. They help stabilize it, so you don't get erosion from the soil or also from wind. Some of them are a group of cyanobacteria and can actually help fix nitrogen and provide that for some of the plants around the area. And they're quite fragile. They take, if I would remember correctly, they can take decades, maybe even many years to reform. So whenever I see these, I try my best not to step on them because they are so delicate, and it would take a long time to restore them. Generally, they're going to be found in like open areas. Where they're not covered up or by grass or anything, and they have all different kinds of shapes. Here's one here. Another interesting type of biological soil crust is this stuff called nostoc, and the best way I can describe it is like, I'm sorry for the description, but it's like solid boogers. I know it's gross, but that's what it feels like. It's slimy, it's gross. I was reading that some people call it like troll's butter or witch's butter or something like that, or jelly, because they think it fell from the sky. And that's because you don't know when it's dry. So like right now, I think you guys said it was really dry there. You're not going to see it. But as soon as a rain event comes, that stuff pops up and you'll see it, not everywhere, but you'll see it in a lot of the drier areas on the slopes. And it just looks like green mass. It's gross, but it plays a vital role in the soils in our region. Okay. Here's also some just real quick pictures of wildlife. I know some of you are interested in that. You also come across some really cool things. We have, of course, prairie dogs. In the springtime, you may come across a bull snake. They're supposedly not poisonous, but they can grow up to 6 feet long, just FYI. The occasional horned frog, which blends in beautifully with the ground. On a dry year, I got really lucky and actually saw a coyote from afar. The vegetation was really brown and dry, so nothing was growing, and it was just, walking around. Jackrabbits, I've scared many of those. They'll take off like crazy. And of course, the cute little burrowing owls, those are always neat to see. Although looks like he was mad at me for taking that picture. Oh well. There's also a lot of pollinators out there. This is another thing that I'm curious about. What else, what pollinates these things? There's tiny little bees here. You'll commonly see the sweat bees. These are these iridescent green bees. They're all over the place. Different types of butterflies, the skipper and the bluet. I caught a robber fly, and along with his meal, they will actually catch their prey and just suck the juices right out. So that was pretty cool to see. Bumblebees and different types of wasps. So really cool stuff. But that's for another talk. All right, now time to get to the plants. So I've divided up the kind of the flowers by season, so you can kind of know when to expect these to bloom. We'll get through halfway and we'll take like a little 5-minute break and then we'll continue on. But we're going to start with the spring, of course, early spring, I should say. These are the first ones to appear. And if you're lucky, sometimes you can see things as early as February. Come on now. Oh, there we go. So, whoops. Okay. Stay. Okay. So the first one is going to be bladder pod, Physaria gordonii. And this is the first one that you might catch blooming. I've seen this one. I've seen at least a flower the last week of February. It's probably the earliest that you're going to get. But it starts, I mean, it's the first thing to really literally carpet the landscape. It's also, they're a great early nectar source for a lot of pollinators. I don't have the video, but this is over by the archaeology area. And I have a video where you just look at the horizon and there's just pollinators zooming back and forth, trying to get their first meal for the season. They have they're really distinctive 4 yellow petals. This is also in the mustard family, and that's the typical shape of or number of petals for those flowers or look. And then later on in the season, they actually develop with seeds inside. So I read somewhere that, you know, if you step on them, you can actually hear them pop. I haven't really seen that, but definitely they do live up to the name as bladder pod. And this is just to show you how much they carpet the area. This is in the northern section of the draw. This is one of my friends here. All that yellow is bladder pod. So that's why I say when they carpet the landscape, everywhere. Now, if the previous winter is dry, like if they don't get a good enough spring rain, the bloom will not be as good. So hopefully with winter moisture, or at least early in the spring, it can kind of carry the plants over, but it's really cool to see. I'm going to say that a lot. I'm going to say these plants are cool. These plants are awesome. This is my favorite plant. I can't choose. So with the Gordon's bladder pod, they actually they're low to the ground. And of course, like I said, very widespread, but there is a cousin of this species. It's called roundleaf bladder pod, Physaria ovalifolia. And this species only occurs on those caliche slopes. So instead of being very widespread, it basically is like one individual clump. It has the yellow flowers very similar to its cousin, but they're held up on these long stems. So they stick way above the foliage. And like I said, that's the extent of that plant. You'll just see it spotted here and there, but it's not as extensive as the Gordon's bladder pod. But one of our caliche slope favorites. Another one that you can easily identify is the blue flax, Linum pratense. This one commonly occurs around the boardwalk, the Wildflower Trail, and near the building. And it just, again, this one fills the area quite a bit. 5 blue petals. And they're very dainty. I mean, they just like kind of, blow, just peacefully in the wind. Nothing too major about them, but they're one of the earliest to bloom too. And once you start learning to recognize the species, you'll see how widespread they are. But just very, very nice little flowers in that area. 2 other species that you'll see, won't get into too much detail on them. I just posted these because their flower shape is so unique. The first one is called scrambled eggs. Still trying to figure that one out. I mean, sometimes with these names, I'm like, what were these botanists sipping on? Because that does not quite look like scrambled eggs. But I thought it would be fun if if you could find another species that grows at the same time or blooms at the same time and you call it bacon, you know, that would be cool. But very long tubular flowers. This one's not really widespread. You just kind of have to catch it. It's very short bloom time. I've mostly seen it around the building. The fringed puccoon, on the other hand, another yellow species, has it's like what the name says. It's got very nicely fringed tubular flowers that drop down into a tube. And actually, these are not the true flowers. Apparently, there's smaller the actual flowers actually appear down at the base. And these just help to attract pollinators or whatever pollinates it to those flowers. So it's kind of like, you know, your poinsettias, you know, the color is not really the flower. They're just using it as an attractant to the actual flowers. What's interesting about this one too is what you'll find, Scott does prescribed burns out at the landmark, and he'll, you know, burn certain sections on a rotational basis, like, you know, every 3 to 5 years. Well, he burned an area near the building, and the next spring, these popped up everywhere. Like you would see and they're little clumps maybe about this big. They were everywhere. So that was interesting to see that this was kind of responding to the fire, or its seeds were probably. Scarlet globe mallow, Sphaerosia coccinea. This is a gorgeous little plant. This one starts out as, it's kind of a small shrub, probably no bigger than about half a foot tall. And it usually, you can find it in low-lying areas, kind of along some of the paths, probably mostly in like the northern section. And it just like it says, scarlet globe mallow, it does have that typical mallow flower where you've got 5 petals, and then all the stamens and pistils are collected in the center and stick out. This species, is my official flag that spring has started. Like when you see this species, generally it seems like the weather has, the cold weather is over. We are now really into spring. So I always look at this one to kind of be the sign that we're getting into our stuff is really starting to bloom. This is another, you can see here, this picture is not common. This was another one that responded to fire. This was taken last year. Scott had burned the area. This is the northern section of the landmark in 2018. And I go there in April, and oh my gosh, this is what we see. I've never seen the globe mallow this thick. It was incredible. Like you could just lay in it for how extensive it was. So another one that's really interesting to see respond to fire. And it does have all these like little hairy, the leaves are very silvery green, and they're covered in hairs, which is pretty neat. So definitely look out for this one. Okay, so like I said, now we're going to get into the true spring, April to mid-May. And if you're wanting to see the biggest bang for your buck, let's see, I would say mid-April to like mid-May is when you're going to see the greatest concentration or greatest number of flowers in bloom at one time. Of course, there's things bloom all throughout the season, but this is a time period where everything starts to get going. Pardon me. Okay, so I'm not going to take time to go to every single aster that's out there, because we have, what, 180 species, but just to show you the diversity of asters out there, or out at the landmark, it's quite remarkable. And it does take some practice with, learning to recognize these species, but they're all really neat. I'll just say, for example, sleepy daisy, it blooms kind of closer to the summer, and it does not bloom before noon. Like it lives up to its name. You can walk past it in the early morning, that flower is closed, and you come back through the trail afternoon, whoop, there it is. So the other thing is, I know with a lot of asters, they tend to be yellow and look like daisies. So we have, if you're a botanist, this little abbreviation DYC or DYA, and pardon my French, damn yellow composite or damn yellow aster, because there's a lot of yellow aster. So if you don't know what it is, it's okay. Just call it a DYC and move on, and you'll be good. This is one of the earlier blooming species. This is a feathered dahlia. Definitely see this one. It is so beautiful, and it is native to the Panhandle. It's a small shrub, only growing about a foot tall, with the tiniest of leaves, like super, super tiny leaves. But it actually flowers before the leaves come on. And the flowers are really striking because it's these little pea-shaped flowers. It's in the bean family, and it lives up to its name. It's got these little feathery appendages right at the base, but it is a really gorgeous shrub. And this one tends to like the sloped areas and right along the ridge or edge of the draw. The other interesting thing, and this is one piece of this plant that I don't know more about, and I would like to learn more. But as seeing this plant over and over in the fall, I noticed these little red things appearing on the stems, and I thought, okay, I thought that was the fruit actually. But when I opened one, I realized, nope, that's not the fruit. This actually is some type of larva inside, and that is my thumb, and that's how big it is. It's a tiny little orange worm. And the best I can come up with, it's possibly some type of gall midge. Galls occur in all different species of plants, primarily shrubs and trees. And it's usually some like wasp insect that initiates like a chemical reaction on the stem to generate this like protective structure where the midge can actually like lay its eggs inside, and that egg will eventually develop into a larva and either pupate in the soil or emerge later on as an adult. The galls don't really hurt the plant, no major issues or whatnot, but the feathered dahlia tends to have a lot of them, so you'll notice them in the fall. And galls also, what that insect turns into is just not well studied, not just for this species, but galls in general. So the best we can assume is maybe it's some kind of midge. It'll be interesting to see. Oh, we got some questions. Let's see. Nice bedtime. Oh, yay. Let's see. Okay, so somebody else said that they think that this is also, they agree that this is a gall midge. So yay, we're on the right track here. So the next thing to do would be to like actually, capture a couple of these and see if you can get the right environment to actually have them develop into something, and then actually photograph what comes out. That would be really cool. But another thing with the dahlias, it's one of my favorite plant genera, possibly because we don't have just one, we don't have two, we don't have three, we actually have 9 species of dahlia. Whoop, come on, out there, yeah. And 2 of these I did find, 2 of these were not listed in one of the original surveys. Big top dahlia and black dahlia I did add to the list. So just to show you this diversity in just a 325 acre area is amazing. These 2 right here, sometimes plants are funny. They try to trip you up because from afar, they look very similar. You're like, okay, it's purple. It's got this cone-shaped thing. I know it's purple prairie clover, right? Wrong. I started realizing that the growth form of this one was a little different. And that's when I realized I was actually looking at a different species. So slim leaf prairie clover likes to grow kind of at the base of some of the caliche slopes. And it has more of a prostrate growth. So its stems kind of go across the ground, and then the flower kind of sticks up at the end. Now, the messed up part is these their growth times overlap. So the slim leaf prairie clover will bloom and get started, and then all of a sudden purple prairie clover also blooms at the same time. So it's like, great. So you have to kind of do a little sleuthing, but you can kind of see some of the differences. These have more of a rose purple flower, while this one's more pink, and you can definitely see that the what will be the flowers are, you know, this one's more numerous. Golden dahlia, there is only one location where this species grows in the entire landmark. At least I have not seen it anywhere else. And Scott, who's constantly out there, he's just as knowledgeable about where things grow. He has only seen it grow in one location. So why? I don't know. Maybe it's the soil. Maybe I have no idea. The one I'm wanting to confirm again is round-headed prairie clover. If you look at the distribution maps, they're mostly in the central, like north central Texas and further south. But I've seen another area where this plant, well, in Tahoka, this plant growing. So it makes me think that maybe this plant actually occurs in this region. It's just not as well studied. Don't know. James's dahlia, this one is only about this big. It's probably about 2 inches off the ground, and it blends in with the soil super well. It's on top of the ridges, and it's kind of actually mixed in with that cryptogamic soil, but you will not see it until it flowers. Like it's like camouflage. The black dahlia, there's about 8 or 9 specimens, and they're all kind of concentrated in one area. They're kind of down, if you guys know where the bridge is behind the building, in that low-lying area, there's a couple of those shrubs in that area, and they only bloom in the fall. The rest of these bloom in the spring and summer, which is interesting. So a lot of just, you know, curiosity of why, you know, how is it that these species can all, you know, exist out here? It's really interesting. Oops. Come on. Okay. So another one of my favorites, chocolate daisy, Berlanderia lyrata. And if you ever get the chance to smell one, like if you see it, you need to smell it because it really smells like chocolate. It's wonderful. And this one grows commonly around the paths. It's really distinguishable from all those other yellow asters because the center kind of has this ring of red, sort of burgundy color flowers. These are actually leaf flowers. The petals are just more of an attractant here, but they smell wonderful. And I found something out the last time I was there. I went down to smell one of these. You might have to do a little yoga to get down there, but I went too far and actually bumped my nose into the flower. And I was like, oops, oh well. Stood up, and then I inhaled, and I could still smell the chocolate. So if you really want to enjoy yourself, maybe rub the flower on your nose and you go walking and, you know, enjoy some chocolate while you're walking. Another distinguishing feature, and I don't know if you can see it here, but on the back side of the petals, you can kind of see that there's some red striping on the flowers. That's another distinctive characteristic. A lot of the other yellow asters don't really have that, but you'll definitely see them open on sunny days. On cloudy days, they tend to stay closed. So one of my favorites. This is another nice one and very unique. This is downy paintbrush, Castanea sessiliflora. And this is a cousin to the Indian paintbrush that you commonly see in Central Texas with the bluebonnets. We have our own species up here. It's not as vibrant, that's okay, but it just grows in like these little tufts here. It does like that, again, that dry caliche soil. And it's a very short time frame. It's only a couple weeks that you see them, and then they're gone. You know, a very quick turnaround. And like some of the other plants, all this pink color that you see here is actually not the flower. This is. The pink coloration is used to help attract insects to that plant. So this actually, on the very tips, you can see right here, this is the flower. Just really neat. And the pink coloration can vary. I've seen it like almost kind of greenish white to very dark pink. And you know, it makes you think, oh, okay, is that because of the soil? Is it that because of the genetics? Is it because of the minerals in the soil? I don't know. Research paper. Okay. Oops. Come on. Okay. So we do have a few cactus species out here. One of the first ones you'll maybe or maybe not encounter is horse crippler cactus, and it totally lives up to its name. This is Echinocactus texensis, and this one is not to be trifled with. The way I describe it is it looks like somebody took a basketball, painted it green, cut it in half, and plopped the top in the ground. That's and then maybe sprinkled some thorns on it. They start off really small and then gradually increase in diameter. And I have found one, I came across it that was about a foot in diameter, and they blend in with the ground well. You really don't notice them until they bloom. And so you can see why with these nasty thorns, why they're called horse cripplers. They'll damage your tires. I mean, even car tires, you can kiss those goodbye. So you definitely want to be careful when you're around this, but it's still a really, really cool cactus. Beautiful pink flowers around April. And then later on, it will produce these bright red fruits on them. I do have a picture of where a rodent of some kind has actually chewed or like eaten the fruit. I'm amazed because it avoided all the spines and prickles and everything like that, but it needed to eat. So, but yeah, just a really, really interesting species, just for the size of it or just the way it grows. Any questions so far? Any other questions? And you can unmute yourself if you need to. It might be easier. Nope. Okay, we'll keep trucking along. Another two that you'll commonly see out there are Gaillardia species. You probably are very familiar with this, especially the firewheel, the Gaillardia pulchella over here. It's very distinctive and very well known in Texas. This one, interestingly, is not as widely distributed through the landmark. Most of them occur right when you start the trail, the path right outside of the building. Just down before you get into the draw. They're kind of on the left side, right across from the staff parking lot. You'll see a lot of them there. I don't see them too much anywhere else, but and also what you'll notice is our flowers out there have more red. Other species of or other types of Gaillardia, you'll see more yellow at the tips. And I had this discussion with Scott, and he was thinking that the Central Texas species, the ones that are more like Austin, Dallas area, they're like an ecotype. They're going to have more of that yellow tip to the edge of the petals, whereas the ones here in the western part of the state and maybe into New Mexico have more red. So it could be more genetics or little ecotypes here and there. And its cousin is the yellow Gaillardia. Doesn't look too much like this one, and it's distinctive. Actually, this one you can tell from the other yellow asters. The petals tend to hang down in like this, they're clustered in like a little chicken foot, and they kind of hang down underneath the red center. They kind of grow pretty tall, so maybe about a foot or so up in the air. So these are two Gaillardia species, Gaillardia pinnatifida and pulchella. Pinnatifida blooms a little bit earlier, and then firewheel comes in more closer to summer. Tahoka daisy. This one is a fun one to say if you want to impress your friends. It's Macaranthera taniquitifolia. Just has a nice little flow to it. This one, Tahoka daisy, is named for Tahoka, Texas. It was discovered at Tahoka Lake, which I hope you guys get a chance to go to if you haven't already been. There's a lady that lives down there, and she owns the lake, and it's a salina, salt lake, and she has often let our chapter, just either explore the area or camp out there, just to enjoy nature. Really, really nice area to explore. So, but it wasn't first discovered there, but it was named after that area. So another this is another easy aster to figure to determine because there's no other purple flower out there like this. Very fine, light green foliage. Nothing too striking about it, but it is the yellow and purple are just a nice contrasting colors. When this goes to seed, it has these like little puff balls. And I used to collect these seeds as part of my professor's research when I was in grad school. And we would go out and collect wildflowers and seed, and we'd collect so much that when we put it in a like a huge sack, it would feel like a pillow. These are soft and fluffy, and they just blow, just easily in the wind. They're really fun to mess with. So just a really cool flower. All right, let's see what the timing is. Okay, we're getting into the true summer. So do you guys want to take like a quick break? We can, if you need to run to the restroom, get some water or anything like that. And let's come back at 2 minutes before 7. That sound good? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Oh, man. Oh. I know, I was like, I know, because, well, you said, like, Linda had a family emergency, and then Kippy wasn't picking up, and I'm like, oh, crap, what happened here? Okay. Oh, okay. Good. Okay. Did she fall down? What happened? But, if uh, Oh. Okay, are we all back and ready to go? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. All right, so those were spring wildflowers, and now we're gonna get into the ones that kind of pop up summer. So late May to July is when you're gonna mostly see these. Let's see. Okay. Okay, good. So this first one is called Ratney Crimaria lanceolata. And I've mentioned, kind of touched on this before, but a lot of plants at the landmark seem to do some really good camouflaging and blending in. And this is one that does that. This is a perennial plant, but what happens is it's like you don't notice it's there, and then all of a sudden, because it blooms, you see it everywhere. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. And then you start seeing it all over the landscape. You're like, it's over here, it's over here. It kind of likes to be, or you'll see it like kind of just up from the path, kind of high up, not high up, but just a little bit above it. And it's this small shrub, about a foot, foot and a half tall, maybe about 2 feet wide, 1.5 foot to 2 feet wide, and it has these long, these silvery leaves and stems. But the most attractive feature is these flowers, these tiny pink flowers, which are gorgeous. Like, to me, they look like an orchid species or something you would find in that family. It doesn't look like something you'd find in the South Plains, but there you go. So it's just very unique. You just don't see this type of flower out there. And you, like, just even observing and going out there, you don't have to always carry your textbooks or everything. You learn so much just from, looking at these species and experiencing them and so on and so forth. So one day, so I've seen these early in the, summer, and I'm like, okay, that's what they are. But I had never seen the fruit. I never thought to look for them. I think this was about August. I was on the perimeter road, and I bent down to take a picture of a plant. All of a sudden, I felt this sharp pain in my knee. And I looked down and I see this. Yeah, I was like, I had put my knee in one of those things. They're not as bad as the sandburrs that you have in your yard, but they're pretty close, okay? They've got little hairs on them, but they're just as prickly as they look. So these are the fruits of Ratney. So, which is really, really neat. So here's some of the leftover flowers, and then the fruits are right here. So just watch your step out there. There's a lot of things that like to poke and prod you. And actually, this is, yes, it's painful to us, but that's actually a good way of the plant uses to disperse its seeds. So hopefully some passing animal will either, brush up against this or, get it on its fur and, walk off with it and transport it somewhere else. So it's just a reproduction strategy. Okay. This one is a cool, neat little species. This is a big fruit evening primrose, or Enothera macrocarpa subspecies incana. Mouthful again. And the reason why it's a subspecies is because the straight species, Enothera macrocarpa, actually has linear green leaves and occurs more so in the eastern part of the state, all the way up into Missouri. Ours is a little different because it has silvery foliage, and rounded leaves rather than linear. So it hasn't been classified as a true separate species from the straight one, but obviously there are some clear differences between the two. And this does live up to its name, when macrocarpa, meaning big fruit, also big flower. This one I measured was about 4 inches across. Okay, this thing is huge. but it'll have a few, these are the stems back here. There's a few flowers coming off of it, not too many, but they're massive. Primrose flowers are very distinctive. They all kind of look very similar to each other. So you can, if you learn to recognize them, you'll know you'll have that kind of species or that type of flower. Another interesting thing about the primrose family is the pollen on these stamens here actually hangs off in these long, thin strands. Now, if you go online, you can really see this, but if you look closely, there's an anther right here, anther right here, and this line in between, you can actually see the pollen hanging off of that strand. So that is how a lot of primroses reproduce. It's pretty interesting. This species is not, there's not a lot of them. They tend to be like just small clumps, and these definitely, again, like that caliche soil off the slopes of the draw. So you can see behind here and over here. We also have a couple of other primrose species as well. There's a bee blossom, Enothera suffrutescens, heartweg's evening primrose, Enothera hartwegii, and lizardtail gara, Enothera curtifolia. So these are all relatives. You can kind of see the same similar shape to the other species. Now, this one I know looks a little different. This actually used to be in the genus Gara. You may still see it in some of the older books as Gara. I forgot the name. Tocinia, I think. Anyway, taxonomists like to do this, which I give them credit for, but they decided, no, it's not a Gara, so we're going to stick it in Enothera. So a lot of the Gara species are now Enothera. I think the same with this one, the lizard tail Gara. I still call it that, but it's actually an Enothera now. It's a primrose. I'm just going to go with the flow here. This one is really distinctive because it's super tall. This one can get about 4 or 5 feet tall, just about as tall as me. And you commonly see this one growing along the boardwalk, as you can see. This is just down from the building. This is that big seating area. But it grows often right along there and just kind of hangs over onto the boardwalk. This one tends to like the Hartweg's evening primrose, also likes the areas with the same environment as the big fruit evening primrose, though the yellow is like very much brighter and it has more smaller green leaves. And then the bee blossom, that just kind of pops up everywhere. You can find it growing like in the middle of the path. It's incredible, or on the sides of it. But yeah, it just likes that environment. So there is one other species I didn't put up. There is a white primrose. I still need to figure out which species it is. It might be Enothera albicollis, but there are 2 that occur in our region, and they don't bloom frequently enough for me to be able to determine what they are. So still working on that. Plain zinnia. This is another popular one that's become popular, and even in yards, because it's such a great shrub or small subshrub. This is a low-growing shrub, probably only gets about, I would say about half a foot. Yeah, about half a foot tall. And it blooms like kind of roughly in the end of May. And it's just a little clump of yellow flowers. This is, even though it's an aster, it is easily distinguishable because it just grows in these massive clumps. And then the clumps can sometimes mass together to form like just a little colony, basically. But what's unique about these is that these petals actually stay on after they're finished blooming, and they become papery in texture. And then later on in the fall, the wind will just blow them and the seeds get dispersed. So that papery foliage is really neat. I did some reading on this species because it was one of my research projects. And what's cool too is that they have 2 different seed types. So they have 2 different morphs of the seeds. And there was a study done that tested the germination of them, and it turns out that they have different germination percentages or rates. I'm sorry, percentages. And the thought is that with the 2 different types, it's kind of like an insurance policy for the plant. So on some years, one type of seed may grow more and flourish. And maybe on other years where maybe the rainfall or the conditions are not so great, that seed might germinate. Or it has extra seed in the seed bank in case of bad years where it can grow. So it's kind of interesting to see plants have that, you know, like I said, insurance policy, just in case things don't go the way they're supposed to. Several plants do that, but this most notably with plain zinnia. Okay, here's another one of our cactus species, Echinoceras reichenbachii. This one is a cylindrical cactus, only getting, you know, a couple inches tall, not very roughly shortened to the ground. And they tend to bloom all at the same time along kind of the slope again, especially if you walk just up from the building. There's 2 large slopes where I spend a lot of my time, and you'll be able to see them blooming whenever they're blooming because it's multiple ones just dotted in the landscape. Here's what they look like when they're fully bloomed. Just gorgeous. Again, that dainty, feathery little petals here. Sometimes you'll see them as singular columns here. A lot of times they tend to group together, so you'll have multiple ones growing very tightly close together. So I've seen probably more of the clusters more often than this one, but they do like those rough soils. These are not as dangerous as the horse crippler. They're not too bad. You're not going to really run into them and hurt yourself too much. But now this I happened to come across on the perimeter road. I've never seen, like I said, they do cluster together, but this is to an extreme level. I have never seen this before. And I hope that we can, when I get back there, I'll catch these in bloom and hopefully see this in bloom. Because can you even imagine what that looks like when they're all blooming at one time? It is just insane. It's got to be insane. So fingers crossed. Living in a different state is hard because you have to time it. You have to pick your times when to go to try and catch these things now. This was a fun one. This one is called stickleaf, Menzilia multiflora, and it lives well up to its name. It's a small plant getting a few feet tall. And let's go on. And it's aptly named for the tiny hairs that grow on its leaf. And this is always fun. So if you want to mess with somebody, just go pick off leaves and you can just literally like slap them to your clothing and they will stick. It's so much fun. But those little hairs are the ones that do the trick. So this is one I walked into. That's not me balancing the plant, that it's sticking to my leg. I will say just note that if you have these on your clothes, you can wear them for a little bit, but make sure you take them off before they dry because they do not come off in the wash. Like they will dry, get crispy, and the leaf breaks up into smaller pieces, and you're gonna have to hand pull it. I washed those pants, I think at least 2 or 3 times. Still had to pick them off by hand. So, and especially sometimes they grow in huge groups. So if you accidentally walk into one, have fun. But what's interesting about this one is there's a couple of these that grow on the slopes. Again, they love that rough soil. But every time I went up to it, I never saw the bloom. I could tell that this was after the bloom. I could see the bracts here. This is, you know, they're drying up and it looked like the petal was closed, but I went at all times of the day. I went, you know, early morning, 8 o'clock when the landmark opened. I went in the middle of the day, in the evening, nothing. I'm like, when do these things bloom? They've got to bloom because I've seen flowers, you know, or remnants of flowers on these plants. Then it hit me. It blooms at night. So I was like, oh, great. How am I going to do this? The landmark's closed, even though I know the staff. So during one night hike, we had just finished and I had been leading one of the groups with my friend. And I said, hey, we're done. Let's run down to the boardwalk. I want to check something. Bring your flashlight. So we ran down to the boardwalk and sure enough, yay, we found them. They bloomed at night. So I was like, okay, that solves that mystery. I would love to see this again and get better pictures, but all I had was my phone camera, and there was a ton of pollinators on them, which was really interesting. They were going to town on this plant. So it would be interesting to go back and see this, see this again up close to see what was actually crawling around. I do know I saw a couple of beetles, but there might be some other things. But yep, night bloomer. That also makes you think, okay, well, there's got to be other species that bloom at night. This probably is not the only one. So it would be interesting to do a night walk too, to see what's out there. Hopefully we don't encounter a coyote though. Buffalo gourd. Hold on. Cucurbita foetidissima. This is one of our gourd species out there. I think it's the only gourd species. It is in the pumpkin family, related to them. This one is really neat because it's very prostrate to the ground. The stems can grow up to about 20 feet long. They tend to grow out in kind of the open areas near kind of in the draw. And they have these gigantic silvery leaves that are covered in tiny hairs. Apparently bison like them. And I'm like, oof, trying to get something hairy down your throat, man. You hope you got some water or something, because that's got to be rough, but oh well. The flowers on these are just like, like your squashes and gourds. They're monoecious, which means they have separate male and female flowers, but they're on the same plant. And you can tell the difference too. The female flowers will have the pistils kind of, clumped up together. There's about three here. And then the male has just the stamens with the pollen. And so you'll see beetles and everything crawling all over them and pollinating them. These tend to also, like I said, that they do grow prostrate to the ground, like they just kind of creep along. But given if they do run into a fence line, they will start to crawl up. They do have a little bit of tendrils to do that. So you'll see these along the boardwalk. Sometimes they grow to the point where it looks like it's just going to snatch you right off, but I'm still here, so that's good. This is in the fall, but you can, just to show you how long these stems are and how they radiate out is pretty impressive. And this is the gourds. They're probably about a little bit round, more oval shaped than like a baseball, but about that size. And they start out with green, with these sort of white splotches everywhere. They're not edible. You can actually, once they dry out, you can decorate them. I've seen, ornaments, and people can do designs on them, but they'll turn yellow first and then turn brown. And what's funny is, if you kids will see these all the time, especially of archaeology day, and they pick one of these up, and I've heard a kid go, "Mommy, look, a dinosaur egg." I'm like, not quite, but they think that just because of archaeology, they associate that this is an egg. They've been watching too much Jurassic Park, basically. Now, the taproot is even more impressive. This is a perennial species that comes back every year, and it owes that to its massive taproot, which can grow 4 to 6 feet deep. So this was 2 years ago. Scott and his crew were working out somewhere, and they were digging one of these up. Unfortunately, the root broke off, but still got to see what it looked like. Pretty impressive. And that's how big it was. So if you can imagine, that was, a couple more feet on that, that thing was probably almost as big as me. That probably weighed about 10, 15 pounds. That thing was heavy. And another little fun thing about this plant too is it lives up to its name. So Cucurbita foetidissima, foet refers to fetid, stinky. And if you ever walk through this plant, crush it or anything, you're going to regret it, because it smells like rancid armpit. It is disgusting. I recall a time when Kippy and I were out. We were in one of the carts working on something, and I don't know if Kippy, you remember this, but you ran over one of these with the cart, and that's all we smelled for the next 10 minutes. It was lovely. So yeah, so just be careful, admire the plant from afar, enjoy it from afar. Just don't step on it, crush it, whatever. I realized that, about a few minutes after I picked up the plant, that, oh great, my hands are gonna stink. So, but that was pretty cool and pretty awesome to hold up. And I think it's still in the interpretive center. It's dried out quite considerably, but they still have it over over against the wall last time I saw it. Okay, so the next one is kind of like, I don't know, the poster child for the landmark, because it's so numerous and so striking. So the famous basket flower. And the basket flower does not start, its journey doesn't just start with the bloom. It actually starts, well, in February. So just like, and actually it goes back further than that, just like the bladder pod, where I said it starts at as a rosette and weathers the winter as in that structure and then eventually grows, this one does the same thing. So not only when you're out early in the February will you see bladder pod rosettes everywhere, you'll also see basket flower rosettes, and they're a little bit more distinctive. The leaves are flatter and they're kind of like these they're just broader in their leaves, but you'll be able to see them quite easily. So that's February 2nd. April 8th, April is when they start increasing in their size. Some of them will run together, generally they're individuals, but you'll start seeing expansion of their leaves, telling you it's getting time. Come on. This is April 26th, so if you look closely, you start seeing, this is all basket flower. All the green is basket flower, and you can start seeing they're getting tall. They're starting to get some height on them. So they go from this rosette and they start putting up a center stem about the end of April. May 13th, you now finally see why they're called basket flower. There's the basket there. And and this is May 20th. So it's kind of hard to see on this image, but on the tips of each of those stems, this is what it looks like. And then if you wait till and then on the roughly the last week of May, the first week of June, this is what you'll see. Ta-da. You will get to witness the basket flower, and it is so gorgeous to see. This is so widespread in the landmark, beautiful pinkish purple flowers, and just tons of insects all over them. Actually, if you touch the center of the flower, the stamens are very sensitive to touch, and you can really see them move actually as they go with your touch. So this was in 2015. This is one of the biggest blooms I've ever seen. Which was super incredible. I mean, they were just everywhere. We had gotten so much moisture from the winter. I think it was mostly from the winter, and that carried those plants in all the way till May. This is the boardwalk. I'm standing in the parking lot basically, and you can see the outline of the wildflower trail here. But all that pink, basket flower. This is me standing in the thick of it. They're roughly they get about 3 feet tall. Some of them a little bit bigger, sometimes 4, depending on where you're growing. And this one, I'm standing on top of one of the slopes, not too far from the building. And so they're two of my friends, they're walking, and you can just see all throughout the draw, the extent. So it's not going to happen every year, unfortunately. It really depends on the amount of winter and spring moisture we get. But if we have a year that happens, you can probably bet you're going to have a good season, actually a great season. Now, this is me in June 15th, June 2015. And this is, like I said, that was the year that it was like a super bloom. Also me with straight hair. This is what happened 2 years later. Ooh. So like what happened is a lot of our beauty also is affected, or not beauty, but the plants are affected, like I said, by moisture. If we don't get that early moisture, it just doesn't work. And so 2017 was a drought year for us. I mean, it was brown and crispy all throughout the spring. And so it was so bad that, I mean, you still see that basket flowers popping up here and there, but some of them actually aborted before even opening, because to flower and also to develop seed takes a whole lot of energy, and a lot of those flowers actually ran out of steam, so they didn't even open. A few made it, but not too many. So it was unfortunate that it didn't look like this, but at the same time, I thought about, yeah, it's not green and pretty like we like it, but it gave a chance for some of those other species that may be closer to the ground or whatnot, a chance to grow or, flower and everything, because there was no competition, little to no competition. There was one particular plant I found that I did not see through here because all of it was too thick. It's covering up everything. So this may have been not a good basket flower year, but other species had a chance to grow and reproduce as well, even if it was, not looking too pretty. So just lessons learned, through this. And like I said, this doesn't just start in spring. I'm actually in the middle of, I think I'm in the middle of the Wildflower Trail boardwalk kind of area. And pretty much most of that green is basket flower. Those are all the rosettes. So after the seeds fall out in the fall, they germinate all at once, and then it gets ready for the entire cycle again. So, and you can see a few buffalo gourds out there too. Those are right there along the ground. Another cactus species we have called jumping cholla. Now, I've only found 3 individual species individuals out there. So there's only one place on the northern part of the trail that you might have to see this, but again, it blends in so well with the landscape. But as you can tell, this is another nasty cactus. This is what the spines look like. And it just, yeah, it means business. I have accidentally, I went to just pick up one of the, or an individual section, and it got stuck in my finger within a second or two. It doesn't take much. That's how sharp they are. This didn't happen at the landmark, but it's also called jumping cholla because these pieces break off so easily. It's just a dispersal mechanism, but fortunately, that did not go through my boot. The rubber was thick enough at the lower part of my shoe where it didn't puncture my foot. But I literally had to take 2 sticks to pull that off, because you can't pull it off with your hand. That's how nasty it is. I also caught this picture. This is a rainbow grasshopper, and I normally like to save insects from impending danger. This one I left alone because I don't know if I moved, I was afraid he's going to jump off and impale himself. I don't know why it was up on this cactus, because this is not the species it hangs out on. I don't know if it lost a bet or just had a death wish. So it just made for a nice picture. But yeah, this is a cool cactus, but one you want to watch out for. I've not yet seen it in bloom. You just don't notice it that much. So I'm hoping to see that one in the future. We also have I just want to touch on these, nothing too detailed, but these are called the hog potatoes. 2 of them are in the same genus, and one is in the species Palmaria, or genus Palmaria. It originally was in Hoffmannseggia, but you can see the resemblance and how close they are. The most common one you'll see is the Hoffmannseggia glauca. This one likes low-lying areas in the draw, and these tend to spring up everywhere. They're like a huge colony, but they have 5 petals and some little reddish glands on the flower and also on the stem. But they're clearly different, but they're very similar. Now, the one part that's really interesting about this one is the Palmaria jamesii is the only one that really has a fragrance, and I kid you not, but it smells like Fruit Loops. And I thought I was crazy. I was like, no, that can't be true. So when I caught Scott one time and I said, hey, come smell this flower. And he got down, took a whiff, got up and said, well, I'll be darned. And sure enough, he confirmed it smells like, it does smell like Fruit Loops. You don't see this one that much. It's very here and there. It's like, you know, you just got to kind of come across it. They don't grow in huge colonies or anything. But if you ever see the flower where it has all the stamens kind of like in this cup, then you'll know you'll have the Fruit Loop hog potato. And they do have little nutlets underneath in the soil underground that apparently, I guess, hogs do like, but I've not pulled one of those up yet, so. All right, so we're kind of getting to we're about to hit the home stretch. So fall, August through September. And there's only a few species, just a couple blooming in the fall, not a whole lot, but the season does start to wind down. So the first one is broadleaf milkweed, Asclepias latifolia. We have a couple species of milkweed out there. This one has the broadest leaves of all the milkweed species, so it's easily distinguishable, roughly about 2 feet tall or so. And the flower clusters occur like, you know, along the stem, kind of tucked away. In one of the books I read, it says it can bloom as early as, I want to say like April or something, but really you may see these come up earlier in the summer or late spring, but they flower towards the end of August or somewhere in there, July, August. We do have a couple of other species of milk. Whoops. Nope. That's definitely not milkweed. There we go. We do have a couple of other species of milkweed. So we have Engelmann's milkweed, Asclepias engelmanniana, and it has the narrowest of leaves. You typically find these in the draw. They're not very widespread, but anytime you see that really thin leaf in between clusters of the flowers, you know this is an Engelmann's milkweed. It looks like it's just like flowers on a stick. It stands pretty tall, maybe about 2-3 feet tall. Asclepias viredifolia, flora, green comet milkweed. I've only come across this like once or twice, so it's kind of a hit or miss. I'd like to, you know, take more pictures of it. But I saw this along maybe one of the paths. And then also one that's not widespread either is antelope horns milkweed. Now there is one planted right near the start of the Wildflower Trail in kind of a planter bed. It consistently comes up every year. And to me, the flowers always look like popcorn balls, like the ones you get for Halloween. For some reason, it just makes me think of those. It's about that size too. Another interesting thing about the milkweed too, I know that there's a lot of push for milkweeds for monarchs and things like that. This is a question, something I've just been thinking about. I have not seen a monarch on these species. And what's interesting, because by the time the monarchs arrive in Lubbock, which is in the, you know, later part of the year, these species have already completed flowering, like there's no flowers left. So, you know, it's just kind of, you're wondering, you know, like, is it something that the caterpillars would eat if they had the chance or whatnot? I'm not sure. It's just, I'm wondering about the timing of it. If these species are, you know, would be good attractors for monarchs because of the timing difference, but I don't know. Just a thought. I couldn't even find any pictures online to even with a monarch on these species either. So just interesting. Goodness. Okay, dotted gay feather, Liatris punctata. This is probably one of the last of the really showy plants, especially pink flowered ones. These are shrubs. You'll see these from afar. They all bloom at the same time and have these very tiny 5-star petals, but flowers, but they grow in these long clusters. And what is it? I think it's the painted lady butterfly is the one that you will see all flying around all of this. Other butterflies too, but they're always on this in the fall. So this is kind of like one of the last ones to really get going. Okay. And this one I would call the last, like, I guess, widespread bloom, perennial broomweed. And it is a perennial plant. It's there, these little clumps of foliage are all over the landmark. They're very widespread, and you don't notice them until the fall because they all bloom up at the same time. And it's almost like a last, nectar or food source for, pollinators. So you'll see quite a few things flitting around them, but they have these tiny yellow flowers and just these low growing shrubs, but very, very, very common throughout the landmark, all throughout the draw, kind of near the paths and some of the slopes too. So, another fun name, Amphiacris dracunculoides. So if you want to learn, have some fun, that's another one. I think that's the last one. Okay, so that's wildflowers in a nutshell, because there's so many more I could have talked about. But I hope that gave you a sense of the plants out there, and just, what you can hope to see for the next year, what to look for, and just to enjoy. Hopefully you'll get a chance to go out there. If if things with COVID gets better and I'm in town, I would love to do a wildflower walk with you guys, so we can talk more about this and show you more where to find things. We'll just play that by ear, but I'm willing to do that. I just wanted to really quickly give you a couple of references to help you if you're interested in learning more about these species. The first two books that I would highly recommend are The Wildflowers of the Western Plains by Zoe Merriam and Kirkpatrick, and Wildflowers of the Llano Estacado by Francis L. Rose and Russell Stradman. Now, these, I believe this one might be out of print, but you can easily get these books if once COVID improves and the Lubbock Public Library has their Friends of the Library book sale. I frequently find these two on the shelves. So if you go, when you go into the basement, go over to the Better Books section, and in the I think it's the very first row, in the corner, there's a row of all like Texas plant books and stuff like that, and related books, and usually you can find one of these two on the shelf. Now, with Zoe's book, The Wildflowers of the Western Plains, you may see it, the earlier edition, it's got a feathered dahlia on it with the pink and yellow flower. That book is still just as good. This one is a newer edition, but they're essentially the same. She may have added a few things, but it's still just as good. The only thing, though, it is arranged by family. So if you're not familiar with plant families, then you might have to do some flipping to find the species. But you get to learn about them as well. Those are the only two that are like really specific for our region. The other two books that I would also recommend are Lone Star Wildflowers by Lashara Neelan and Willa Finley. And if you get the opportunity, Willa Finley is a local author. She lives in Lubbock. She's fantastic. I'm not just saying just as knowledgeable, way more knowledgeable than I am. And I haven't told her this, but I kind of consider her my mentor. She is such a great person. And she's not endorsing this either. I've used her book many times, and it is, this is mostly for the, wider part of Texas, but she does cover a lot of the species that occur in our region. And it does give you even some of the uses for those plants, like what native peoples used to use those plants for, or could be used for. And her book is easy to read because it's arranged by color. So all you have to do is find the flower color and just flip through a couple of pages and you're there. The same with Wildflowers of Texas. This was a new book. This came out about 2-3 years ago. And it's by Michael Eason. He did the one for Central Texas, Wildflowers, which is just as good. Descriptions are a little bit more, not too heavy on the scientifics, but it's good for, it's also arranged by color, and there's a lot of species in there. So I'm all for pictures. Pictures are your friend with identification. So these four are really, really good resources. Oops. And lastly, apps. The books don't have apps, but there are two that I would highly recommend because you can use them anywhere and they're free. So there's this website called wildflowersearch.org, and they have created apps for every single state I think including, I'm not sure about Alaska and Hawaii, but any of the continental US 48 states, lower 48, there's an app for it. And all you have to do is go to your app store and type in, you know, Missouri wildflowers or Texas wildflower, or California wildflowers, and there will be an app for it. And they all have the same kind of format. It's not a, you know, automatic ID app, but you can use it to narrow down what you're looking at. So like this one, you can select, okay, I'm looking at a wildflower. Here's the flower color. And also they had this in an update, they even said flower size. So you can kind of narrow down what you might see, and it'll produce some results, and then you can go from there. It even actually will match your GPS coordinates. So it will tailor the listing to what you're gonna find in the county. And Texas is so big, though, they had to split it into 2 different apps. Not surprised. So West Texas Wildflowers is the one that you want for our area, and it does include some areas of New Mexico and also the Trans-Pecos region. So you can use it for the whole entire area. East Texas is the rest of Texas. So definitely would recommend these 2 apps. And again, like I said, they're free. And then of course, I think some of you are involved. iNaturalist, I didn't put that on there, but iNaturalist is also a great app to learn from, and also get your photos identified by experts. So yeah, so just to wrap up, I will say that no 2 visits to the landmark are ever the same. Like I said, I've been out there. I can't count the number of times I've been out there, and every time I end up seeing something different, learning something, a different experience. There's always something to see out there. It's just a place of peace, I guess. Nature is totally the best classroom. Books are great, no doubt, but you will definitely learn a lot just by actually getting out and seeing it. Even there's a lot of things that you will experience that you can't read from a book. So definitely, when things get better, get out there and explore. And as you saw, and I hoped I could convey, that the Llano Estacado is diverse and beautiful in its flora, and it deserves just as much attention as anywhere else. So yeah. There you go. So if you have any other questions, you can email me at dmckelvey19@gmail.com. I am on iNaturalist. I need to get back on it. I haven't been on there in a while, but I'm Dare to Bloom. So see if there's any other comments. Do you guys have any questions? Or are there anything about any particular plants that you wanted questions about? And you can unmute yourself, that's fine.
I just wanted to say that a lot of the things you taught us back 2.5 years ago have stuck with me, including whenever I see a caliche slope or outcrop, I think this is something I got to look at.
Yay! I'm glad it stuck with you. Hopefully we'll meet up and go botanizing again. And for those of you who know that that's the term for plant hunting, just for fun. Like birders have birding, we have botanizing. Let's stop sharing. Okay. Let's see. Chris, did you have a question? I saw you waving. Oh, okay.
Daria, I'd like to thank you, and I apologize for coming in late. Without my dogs, I really would not have woken up tonight.
That's okay.
Fortunately, I have good friends who came to check on me. But I apologize, really. That's why I have my name as Kippy Dippy Hopper.
No, you're
You
good.
did a great job, and we appreciate it. And I would love to go on a wildflower trip with you sometime.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I can get back there next spring, and I'll definitely do that with you guys. I'd love to meet you guys in person.
Yeah,
So.
well, thank you for so much for this presentation. It was great.
You're welcome. Oh, I think, I hope it's recording.
It is. It's
Okay,
fine.
good.
It
Okay,
is.
that's right. It was you that recorded it. So, okay, great. Okay.
you want us
Cool.
to send you a recording, Daria?
Yeah, sure.
We'll send you
Okay.
access.
Okay, thank you.
It's on our website.
Okay, cool.
Well, thank you,
Alright.
Lena, for taking over.
No,
thanks.
thank you.
I can't even
Yeah.
show my face.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm just embarrassed.
Oh no.